Some people say a man is made out of mud. A poor man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood and skin and bone. A mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. Say, Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. I was born one morning when the sun didn't shine. Picked up my shovel and I walked to the mine. I loaded 16 tons of number 9 coal, and the star boss said, well, bless my soul, you load 16 tons. Why do you get another day older and deeper in debt? Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another, this month's, the February 2025 case of the Mondays. And this is a place where we get to discuss social justice issues through the lens of politics and economics and media. And I'm just going to just jump right into this and bring on a very good friend of mine, Alex Vaiz, who is joining us, a special guest tonight. So, Alex, greetings. Hey. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Yeah, just got in from the Bay Area last night, I think. Yeah. So taking advantage of the long weekend, I think it was good.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in person in not that long ago. It was only about a month or so ago. And maybe to that extent, tell us a little bit more. I'm going to let you do a little quick plug. So just some helpful background. Alex and I met. We're both kind of a part of the evangelical world. And we were both met when we were very much in that world, ministering. He was a pastor. I was the director at World Relief Sacramento. In a very interesting time that we will talk about, because it feels like deja vu all over again, except worse. So we thought it would be interesting to revisit that, and I'll set the table on that just a little bit. But this Monday night live stream, like I said, is more focused on social justice. But I happened to be a guest recently on a podcast that he and a good friend of his provide, called the Deconstructors podcast. Tell us a little bit more about that and and I'll make sure to put links to the YouTube channel in the comments when we're all done with the live stream here.
Oh yeah. Thanks a lot, Kurt. Well, we've my friend and I, he's now retired pastor of Mainline Church, Presbyterian. It's federated Presbyterian and United Church of Christ, the UCC church. And so he just recently retired, but we started about a year and a half ago, or a little less than that, a podcast called Deconstructors Club. And and the reason why we called it that is because both him and I had deconstructed from evangelicalism, and he came out of it. We both came out of it as pastors. We were pastors and leaders in, of course, different denominations and different somewhat different beliefs, but most of those beliefs were fundamental, theology and conservative theology, which promoted, the political identity of, right-wing Republican conservatives. So, and we came out of all of that. He came out of it first years ago, way before me. And that's how he became a Presbyterian minister. And for us, it was, for me, and I say us because Kurt, we kind of went through our process around the same time. What really, was the straw that broke the camel's back for us, basically was the first time Trump became president. I know you and I kind of already had some progressive ideas, that we were managing and wrestling with. If anything, we were becoming so much more open to those ideas. And what just kind of accelerated the whole pace, at least I know for me, and I know probably for you too, but for me was when Trump became president, and the evangelical vote, the majority of the evangelical vote went, for him, like this time around too. And so since then, I was on this strict journey of, deconstruction, really questioning my faith, questioning my theology, questioning everything, really everything. I even talked to my wife about it, and I said, I really want to put everything on the table and question the reasons why, we're doing what we're doing and what we want to choose to do after that. The cool thing with me was that she also was on the journey of deconstruction with me. So that, really helped me out in the sense of, having peace at home, where it would have been a war if she would have clung on to it. And that probably, Kurt, what I'm talking about. Yeah. But through that and through those experiences, both Bob and I, my friend who is a co-host of Deconstructors Club, we just got together and said, hey, why don't we start a new initiative and basically talk about different topics of the reasons why we deconstructed. And of course, one of those major topics of the reasons why we deconstructed was, MAGA and Trumpism, and especially the evangelical vote. So, and we touch on different topics. You were on one too, talking about deconstruction. And so we have many different guests, diverse guests, and it's a great podcast, great episodes. We talk about Christian nationalism. We talk about, how toxic it is, and, basically, the big push, for Trump to be in office once again. Not only that, we talk about, many other theological points and also social points and political points that I believe religion has influenced so much in our society, and how we need to push back, we need to stand against that. And so they're really good, episodes that we've done, and we're excited to launch pretty soon our third season, actually, in probably a few weeks. But yeah.
Well, I recommend, so I will make sure both in the comments and I'll edit the video a little bit later on to add the link when we're chatting about this just a few minutes ago, so people will be able to see it there. I'll make sure it's in the description, but definitely check that out. But we're going to talk a little bit more narrowly tonight, because, and this is where it's like, let's take the time machine, shall we? Let's go back to circa 2017. And this is when you were the pastor at an evangelical church here in Sacramento. I was the director at World Relief, which is an evangelical NGO, humanitarian organization involved particularly in refugee resettlement with predominantly Muslim refugees. So in both, like, you pastored a congregation that had a large representation of undocumented immigrants that were members of your congregation. And meanwhile, I was working with an organization that was resettling Muslim refugees. So as you can imagine, that made us very popular in the evangelical space, right? So, but the light, that's about the only, I don't want to make light of it, because it was incredibly painful to see what fellow human beings were going through. I was seeing it from the vantage point of, for example, I remember a recently resettled Syrian family. They just arrived before the Muslim travel ban went into effect. And they came into my office and they're like, my family was set to travel. Like they were only weeks or maybe a month or so away from coming to the United States. And they were asking me the question, am I going to see my family? And my honest answer was, I don't know. I don't know when you're going to see your family, or if you're going to see your family again, because of the actions that were taking place at that time. I know that for you, that you had one incident that actually made some national press through the LA Times. And maybe do you want to share a little bit about that experience? And then I want to fast forward to today, because there's basically two things that I personally am feeling a laser focus on for this year, for 2025. and one of them is pushing back on the elite ruling class. We clearly have, it's funny, like Biden got on like his farewell speech and started talking about oligarchy. But let me tell you that the Democrats, Republicans, it's a bipartisan effort to kiss the asses of the billionaire elite ruling class and to basically let them hold their leash and do their bidding. So that's one. So it's deep hypocritical, to say the least, that members of the established Democratic Party were going to get on and start lecturing about how, like, oh my God, we got to watch out about this oligarchy thing. It's been around for a long time for both parties. But that's something that I'm very passionate about, is kind of like addressing the top versus bottom class consciousness. That there's a meme out there that I included at the top of a recent post that I published on my website, where it says it's not left versus right, it's top versus bottom. A little bit of a generalization because it's a little bit more complex than that, but it really, in many ways, it is. It is very true. And the elite ruling class loves to do nothing more than pit different groups against each other and make them think of each other as the enemy, when in reality, it's another group of people who are clearly clearly pulling the strings, and folks with immense financial wealth and affluence on our political systems in particular. If that's one part of my post, my passion, my focus for 2025, the other part of my passion is, how do I serve as an ally and stand up and support particularly those marginalized communities, minority communities that are being targeted and being persecuted, and in many cases now, what we're talking about, even driven from the country. So undocumented immigrants. I'm going to focus on a future live stream on the LGBTQ plus community, particularly the trans community. I'll talk about refugees, which is a subject that I know a tremendous amount about, having spent the better part of a decade working in refugee resettlement and in forcibly ministry and service to forcibly displaced peoples. So here we are again, and I don't know about you. It's just like, wow, here we are again. That's what I mean. It's like 2017, now it's 2025. But let's go back to 2017. Tell us a little bit about that experience that made some news in the LA Times and nationally. And then I want to talk a little bit about what you're hearing and feeling from members of the undocumented community that you're connected with about what's transpiring now. So tell us a little bit about 2017 first.
Sure. In the first place, it's surreal that we're back in this position again. It's incredible. It's just incredible. But back in 2017, even the year before, when the elections, when the campaigns were going on, we all had a feeling that Trump was going to become president. And there was just this eerie feeling. We were hoping that we were wrong. And I'm talking about people from our community, but still, they kept their radar on. They kept their eyes open to this, because they're like, okay, he already has said specifically what he wants to do when he becomes president. He wants to start with deportations, and so of course becomes president, and the raids start to happen from the get-go. The beginning of February, kind of, it feels very similar to what's happening. It's just up a notch or two. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But it feels the same. In other words, it's the very first thing that he said he was going to do, and he was doing it. And so what ended up happening during that time is our church was comprised, and it's very multicultural, mostly Latino heritage. And because we're a bilingual church, we had some mixed families, mixed couples. But for the most part, we were mostly Latino and bilingual, Spanish and English. We would do everything bilingual. because there were families that only could, understand Spanish and so forth, right? And most of those families, from the most part, were undocumented. So a good maybe 50% or 60% of our congregation, which is a large number, were undocumented. And a lot of them were, of course, also dreamers. We had a lot of young, families and young people that grew up here in the States and went to school and everything, that spoke fluent English, and were bilingual, of course, but they were dreamers, and so they were afraid of what was going to happen from the beginning of the presidency back then. So fast forward a little bit to Mother's Day of that year of 2017, and one of the things that they were saying was they were not going to come into church properties and also school properties, that they were going to respect, those spaces, which is interesting because now they don't even care about that. But back then they said they weren't, but they still did it. There was, of course, reports that they were on some school campuses and so forth. Well, lo and behold, um, it happened to be Mother's Day, which in our congregation, it's a very important day, especially for culturally for our families. And so if it wasn't Easter or Christmas, the church would be packed out on Mother's Day. So most of the families, and not all the families, would come out on that day. And I'll never forget that day. We had just started our service, and the first, worship songs were going on. And the head usher came up to me and tapped me on the shoulder. And she tends to be a joker, she always jokes around. So she surprised me with a bad joke, I thought. She came up to me and she said, "ICE is in the parking lot." And I was like, I I was like, this isn't a time for that kind of joke. I looked at her, I was like, that's not funny, I said, are you sure? I mean, that's not, her face did, her expression, she would always at least laugh, at the end. Yeah, I am joking. Did not change. She was just straight faced, cold, like she saw a ghost, she was just in shock. And she told me, she says, no, there are 3 unmarked vehicles that are in the parking lot. And one was a sedan, an SUV, and a van. A sedan, SUV, and a van, and they were unmarked vehicles. And so, I mean, the anger that arose in me, I was so angry. I walked out toward, to exit the building to go to the parking lot. I asked a couple of my security to come with me, and they weren't undocumented, the ones that were with me, the security. So, and they were still kind of afraid, you know. So they came with me, and we walked out. And once we walked out, um, and there's just this very small street right in the middle of the parking lot and where the building is. They literally were parked right in front of our flag signs, our exit flags, or in our A-frames, right in front. They knew it was a church. Specifically, they knew it was a church. So they're parked right there, and they were standing outside on full gear. Like, basically, they wanted to terrorize. They wanted to put fear into our community. I mean, it was very evident what they were trying to do. So when I saw them, and I just walked straight toward it, and they kind of identified me as a leader because they saw me angry, and they saw me coming. And they saw me coming with security with 2 other people. So immediately they jumped in their cars, and that was already telling you that they were there for for the reason, telling us with the reason why they were there. Because if they were there for another reason, they would have at least said, hey, we're not here to disrupt anything. I mean, at least talk to me. But why jump in the car? Why get in?
Yeah.
And so they
That's a little bit guilty. Yeah.
Of course, and it was strange. And that's like, talk to me at least. Come on. What's going on? So they jumped in their cars, pulled out one by one, and the sedan pulled out. I jumped in front of the sedan. I did not let the sedan go. I jumped in front of the sedan, and I'm like, what are you doing? And I started telling him, what are you doing? So, and the almost all of, just not the front windshield, but all of the car's windows were mirror tint, so you couldn't see anything inside. So the sedan just opened the window about halfway, and I saw the gentleman, and I saw he had ICE here, was identified right there as ICE, ICE police. And he said, "We're leaving right now." So, and I said, "And what are you doing here?" And he just, we're right now we're leaving. That's all he said. And he closed the window and he took off. So some of the cars that were, so there was some cars circling of the families. I was like, they're not going to come back. And they did. The cool thing was once they saw the cars leave and they saw me talking to them, they felt emboldened to come back. And they saw that
Oh,
they were gone. They
yeah.
parked in the parking lot. I walked right in. The church got packed out right after I had walked in, during those few minutes. And, I just stood up and I told them, I said, I don't want you to be afraid. For my brothers and sisters that are undocumented, this is sanctuary. We are not going to let anyone do anything especially while you're here. We're going to defend you. We're going to fight for you. I said, look
Mm-hmm.
at what just happened. We asked them to leave and they left.
Mm-hmm.
I said, so we're going to do what we can so that they will stop terrorizing us and anybody else in our community. Actually, we did that. A couple of days later, we called all of the news, media outlets out here, and everybody came out throughout the week. I was doing interviews with Fox News, with CBS, ABC, even the Spanish ones, Univision and Telemundo, numerous ones, and even SAC-B and several of them. They all caught on to the story that we were like front page story everywhere.
Yeah.
And then some national syndicates also caught on to our basically our interviews, and they've also put them in there, like the LA Times. I was surprised.
Yeah.
Direct messages on Facebook of people that were sending me pictures of LA Times has you here, almost front
Mm-hmm.
picture here. I mean, a front page. And
Yeah.
so we caused quite the noise, and all of the interviews, I was showing them how close the sign was to where they were parked. And but long story short, one of the reporters from Fox News, she continued to bug the regional director of ICE in this area. And because the first time she had called this director, she had told her, I was mistaken. I saw ICE. I was probably seeing police. I was like, well, why would the police come to our parking lot? For what reasons? And I was like, no, it was ICE. And she said that too. She was like, it definitely was ICE. So finally, come Friday, I think it was Thursday or Friday, the director came out with a statement saying they were in our parking lot, but that they were not there for the congregation, that there was an individual that they were investigating. So you need a van, an SUV, and a car, a sedan, for one individual that you're investigating in the area. We're not buying it. And so what ended up happening was the next Sunday, the community came out. The Brown Beret came out. It was a lot of people protecting us. It was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
They were like, have your service. We're going to protect you all outside. We're going to be here. And, we gave them coffee. We were serving them too. We were thanking them. And it was a great experience, but we had to definitely do something about it so that our community could at least know that we're fighting for them, and we're gonna fight for their safety. So what ended up happening was we had never seen them again. They did not come around. Another thing too is down the street there was a market, a mercado, and for Spanish food, Mexican food and Latin food and so forth. So down the street, their parking lots, they were parking in their parking lot too to terrorize the customers. They didn't come back to that parking lot either. So in the neighborhood, they didn't come back. But that didn't mean that bad things weren't happening. At least we could stave off that. But some of our families were terrorized in their neighborhoods because ICE was going through them. And from our experience, we had a couple of families that experienced the separation and deportation, which was very, very difficult for us. And so it was it was not an easy time. We had a small victory. It was a good victory. It established at least a presence that you don't want to come and mess with us, because we're going to continue to bring the news into this. But it still didn't in many ways give a total safety for the people, or they didn't feel completely safe when they would go home. They knew that they had to face a lot of fear from ICE that could be roaming, and even raids in their workplaces and so forth. So we had through that too with Sacramento Area Congregations Together, a nonprofit here in our town, or organized, that does faith organizing. we had a lot of meetings of Know Your Rights. So we did it not only for the congregation, but they invited other people, and people from the community and people from the city came out in these Know Your Rights presentations that we were doing, in the campaigns that we were doing, which we want to basically, bring that back again and do it, in several other places that, people need to know your rights. They need to know, what that looks like, especially if ICE comes to their door, knocks on their door. Not only that, but even now that they're coming to churches and now that they're going to schools, there are public spaces that they feel that they can invade, but there are private spaces they cannot come in. So there are private spaces in churches, like pastors' offices, administrative offices. Those are private areas that doors can be locked. And, and because of those areas, ICE cannot come in unless they have a judicial warrant. And I know I'm kind of stepping ahead because I'm kind of giving some stuff for this, for now, what's going on in the present moment. But they have administrative warrants that are not, they don't carry the authority to actually allow them to go into homes or private spaces. They cannot go in unless they have a judicial warrant. So that's what you have to know about them. When they say they have a warrant, you have to ask, is it administrative or is it judicial? If it's administrative, you could laugh. That means they're not going to come in, Well, you know what I mean? It's a lie. The administrative warrant is not going to allow them to come in. But unless you open the door. Once you open the door, they can come in. So you can't open the door. You shouldn't open the door. And I'm talking to those that are undocumented and so forth. Or if you have people in an office that's private, you can keep them in a sanctuary, and ICE cannot come in unless they have a judicial warrant. And usually the judicial warrants aren't done or released unless you're talking about somebody that has committed crimes. And being undocumented is not a crime that's being committed. That's what people need to understand. When people are undocumented, people are looked at as criminals, and this is not the case. This is a civil issue. It is not a criminal issue. So undocumented are not criminals unless they committed a crime. So people need to understand that just for being undocumented, that doesn't make them a criminal. And so these are things that people have to know. And that's the reason why a judicial warrant is needed. But the only way a judicial warrant could be given is to ICE is because the person that you're probably trying to protect has committed, crimes here in the United States. But for the most part, that's not the case. So I just wanted to add that to, what's going on even in the present, because even back then we talked about those things too. Here we are again.
Yeah, no, it feels now in retrospect very much like they were just testing the waters to a certain extent to see how, clearly they did more than test the waters, but they were, there was still a level of restraint, and it feels, I think what I'm reading about is that there's less certainty that the federal government, ICE, this administration, there's fear that will they even adhere or follow those laws, those restrictions that would, at least you would say, your rights, the basic rights, are they still going to honor those? And I didn't know if that has that elevated like the level of anxiety and fear in the community that, because you remember at World Relief, we started up an immigration legal services, the reads and all that they were doing, some of that education as well. And it's just, I'm just wondering if you could speak or share any more additionally to the emotional trauma, the fear, the anxiety that the community is feeling. Is it different now than it was then, or is it still pretty much the same thing, or what does that look like for the community?
I would say, the fear they felt back then, they're feeling again. It's heightened fear. But I do believe that just like they had time to make what they're doing better in a bad way, we had time to make things, well, not a lot, but we have the experience now to be able to counteract what's going on. That doesn't mean, though, that there isn't fear. And there's very much fear. There's a lot. I mean, the undocumented community is being terrorized. And so they have to hide. They have to not. For instance, one of the families that we're connected with, the gentleman is a father of a home. He has his wife and children, and he has his own business, and he's worked here for years. But he's been in the process and in the pathway, and it's been very difficult. He's lost a lot of money to try to become documented. It's been a very difficult, if not impossible, experience for him to become, documented. But during this time, the first time around, he was really afraid during the Trump administration, the first time, or the first term. And so he was afraid. But there were ways that, basically he could work around things. This time around, he's even more afraid. And the reason why is because, like you're saying, they're not respecting boundaries at all. Now, again, that's the reason why we counter, like with judicial warrants and, understanding the difference warrants. We have to counter. We have to figure things out. We have to try to be a step ahead of them because they're upping their game. We have to up our game. But these families are so afraid. And he has been talking to us about the stress of being deported and what that means to his family that basically are born and raised here in the US. And he's like, you know what? I feel like I just need to move back to Mexico. I need to move. And that's not an easy thing. His family's from here, and born and raised. Even his wife is born and raised from here in essence. And so he's had, and even with that, you would see it as a window of opportunity. It hasn't been easy at all. So what's happening right now with him is an example of what's happening to many families. There are many of them that are considering we're probably going to have to take off before they, separate us from our families and deport us, and it becomes something very difficult. And you're seeing a lot of families, videos and things that are going on right now through social media where families are they're crushed by seeing their family members being taken in and flown back to their countries, deported, and many of them even going to Guantanamo Bay and what's happening here, which is ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I mean, we're reliving, the Japanese internment camps. We're reliving, what is it called? The repatriate. What is it called again? I had the word in my mind right now. It just left me. But when actual Mexican American citizens were being deported back in the 30s, I think it was in 1930s. So all of these things that are happening, that happened in the past as history, it's so strange to see this happening again. So not only is there fear for the most part with undocumented, now we're starting to see some fear with people that are residents and even citizens. For the most part, residents are even more afraid that their residencies can be taken.
Because like I know the borders are, has talked about, it's like, we're targeting, but he's like, hey, he's like, hey, we'll just, whoever we deport. It's just kind of like and if there's some citizens in there, or if there's some, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah, the fact that some, like just the association with Guantanamo Bay. I'm currently reading a book called Gangsters of Capitalism, which is a fantastic book. And one of the things they're just talking about the history of American colonialism in Cuba that's horrific in and of itself. And the fact that we're just replaying the same tape over and over and over again can just be really maddening. And one of the things that I just think that it's really important, and I'll be really direct, because there's a lot of people that I think a lot of people of privilege who are not members of minority communities who are like, oh, that's horrible, man. Trump won, man. That was really, like, they're really disappointing for them, but they don't have the tangible personal connection to a community that's being targeted, like really targeted. I have some, like I said, we'll talk about this in a future live stream, but some a couple of very close friends who are members of the trans community. Their fear is palpable.
It's
Like,
real.
and in what's happening is unprecedented. And same thing with the undocumented community. We were just talking about refugees just a few minutes. I mean, my fiance is going to probably find out tomorrow whether or not she's getting laid off tomorrow, because that has completely ground to a halt. I can go to the I'll talk more about that in a future episode about just the cruelty towards individuals who have or are in the process of escaping war-torn environments. It's unbelievable. And I think one of the things that I think we need to impress and we need to focus on is we are past reform. We're past the place of just minor political reform. We need a revolution. And that revolution needs to be passionate, intelligent, coordinated effort to stand, particularly in allyship and in advocacy, with those communities that are particularly being targeted. And so I'm just kind of curious along those lines. You shared what are some of what we're here in Sacramento. What would you say for somebody who says watching this and they want to engage and they want to stand in support with our undocumented brothers and sisters? What are some individual or what are some local organizations? What are some national organizations do you think are good organizations or resources, things that they can engage with that might help equip them to do that effectively?
If people are involved specifically with faith and religion, one of the best organizations, if not, of course, the one that's doing the job here locally, Sacramento, has been Sacramento Area Congregations Together, SAC-ACT, for faith organizing. And when I say faith, it's not just a Christian tradition. It's, Muslim, it's Jewish, it's, as Baha'i, it's several. Where we're coming together as the faith community to be able to stand with our undocumented siblings, especially in this hour. And for them, I mean, it's not just SAC-ACT. We're working with a national organization called Faith in Action. I was just this past December in a meeting in Washington, D.C. with them, where we were talking about what are ways that we can stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters that are undocumented at this moment. And so basically to be able to call them, to be able to be in meetings with them, because there's different levels of organizing. We can do protests, we can go to the Capitol. Right now there's demonstrations that are going on. And they're not to say that they're not helpful, they very much are. But to really change policy, we have to do organizing. And organizing is when we come together and we start working with our elected officials to be able to do something in this hour. And so we need to work with our elected officials. We need to find ways to protect our, communities. And I think that these organizations like Sacramento Area Congregations Together, like Faith in Action, another one is called PICO, which is, PICO is another one too. These organizations, what they do is that they work with giving you resources on what you need to do, what we need to do. In other words, like knowing your rights, doing the campaign, going to the meetings, like also being accompany witnesses to go with undocumented when they go to their court cases, because then ICE is less willing to apprehend people when they see people there that are citizens that are standing with them. And this is a lot of times what they do when they see this happening. It's like, okay, this isn't going to be a good moment for us to seize this person and arrest this person. And it's not to say that they wouldn't attempt to do it, but it makes it less. It makes it harder. It makes it less easier for them to do that. So the accompaniment is one thing, and they train you with that. Also, they train you to be. I had the word too. It's the witnesses, those that are there, that are seeing things, that are going through things. When you are in those, either it be a demonstration, either it be accompaniment, either it be whatever it may be, the situation that you're with this undocumented person. You get to be a witness to see what's going on and what are their rights that are being violated. And these are the rights that are being violated, or the rights that are being violated. These are the moments where lawsuits can come in. We pressure ICE, we pressure the government, the administration. Through all of these things, we can work together and do something significant. How I said, demonstrations are great, but we need to do something more than that. And those are the things that I think are very important when we're doing the action, when we're standing literally in solidarity with them. We literally are there present with them in court cases and beyond. Or if people have time. I know sometimes it's hard because some people don't have time, but when you make time for that, one of the things is how to assist schools that have undocumented families. And one of the things that ICE is doing is that they're going on campuses. So what are ways that we can support our local school when it comes to protecting our undocumented community, our undocumented siblings? So I think that those are things that we need to be active about. And sometimes we don't know what to do, but if we contact these organizations, they'll guide us through what they need. So that way we can be present and in solidarity and in defense of the rights of our undocumented brothers and sisters.
I love it. So if you're local here in Sacramento, SAC area congregations together, and you mentioned Faith in Action, PICO, and I just want to say this as somebody, we've talked a little bit of, just outside, like we were talking at the beginning about deconstructing. And we all, like, as we're going through deconstructing, we land in different places. I'm, I guess, kind of a quasi atheist, agnostic, humanist. But I'll tell you this, I will stand and lock arms with the faith community, even if I don't share the same doctrinal beliefs. I will lock arms with them and stand with them against this kind of oppression and injustice. And that's what we need, is we need something that's going to unite us across any other kinds of ideological or belief systems, whatever it might be. There's something where we clearly should be able to say, listen, when human beings who are just trying to live and work and have a life and be happy and safe are being targeted simply over an immigration status, this is wrong and it needs to stop. And I love that the resources and the practical guidance that you've shared. And when we're done, I might follow up with you and ask you, send some other links or something like that. I'll make sure to add them into the description of this video or in the comments.
Yeah,
well.
Kurt, sorry to interrupt you, but I was going to tell you that too. I said that I was going to say that there are other organizations. I don't have right now the names of those organizations, but that we've worked with side by side, because the more, the greater, the better. So we've worked with other organizations here locally that are also defending the rights of undocumented immigrants.
Wonderful.
So I want to provide those to you. So
well, see, I mean, this is so I mentioned that recently I was collecting some of my thoughts. Like so many of us, I think we're just like, there's been so much that's been thrown out there in we're just a month in. I was actually just watching John Oliver's Last Week Tonight. He did like the synopsis of the first month, and it's excellent. I'll probably put the link into that. It's great. It's typical John Oliver, so there's a lot of humor in it, but it's also incredibly insightful and challenging. But I know I was collecting my own thoughts on what I want to commit to, some of which I shared earlier. And it does feel like it comes down to some of these things in terms of engaging politically with our representatives. We need to elect people in the next election who are not bought and paid for, who are principled leaders. So that's one of the four things that I identified. The other three was one, for those of us who are capable, especially if you're like lower middle to middle, quote unquote, middle class America, is is boycotting, is using our money wisely to make sure that we are not putting money into the pockets of the same people who are enabling this oppression and who are exploiting the political systems. So we know that there's that aspect of it. There's, in terms of our work, there's walking out, there's striking, there's or just refuse if you have the option. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to work for this. I'm being offered a job at this position. I'm going to work for this other company because I know what they stand for. This other one, I don't believe them, or they're clearly contributing to these kinds of injustices. So it comes down to kind of our money, our labor. Also, like you mentioned, protests and civil disobedience serves a purpose, because sometimes you need to gum up the gears of capitalism and grind it to a halt and say, you know what, we're not going to. That's what I shared a short the other day because my fiance found this thing that I hadn't heard about in history, the seccesio, which was this in ancient Rome, this practice, and it happened like 3 or 4 times, where it was called the secession of the plebeians. Plebeians is like the common person. And there were situations where they literally were like, you know what? They just all got up and left a city. And all of the rich elite class was just sitting there. And they're like, okay, why don't you try to live without us? Try living without us for a little bit of time. And it worked. So I feel like those are the 4 kind of prongs that I'm really focusing on, is like, okay, what am I spending money? So I have a little bit of of extra money. I purchased these things, okay, I'm going to be really strategic. I canceled certain things. I'm not spending money here. For those of us who are very passionate about the Palestinian cause, you think of the BDS movement and their targeted approach to identifying which businesses to boycott. Obviously, Martin Luther used this very effectively. And actually, it was probably one of the things that got him killed, was that he was elevating economic withdrawal as one of his primary strategies. And it literally probably ended up, was one of the factors that cost him his life. So economic withdrawal, where we work, are we gumming up the system? Are we engaging in mass protest? Are we involved in sit-ins? All of those kind of things. And then are we really focused on actually electing real, not politicians who like to talk the typical American talk just to get elected, but real principled leaders who are going to go and they're not going to waver when it comes to standing and representing us as it relates to these injustices. So I did want to share one of the things related to that. Let me pull up this website that I thought was really good. I just learned about this recently, and this is called this is on the website, the generalstrikeus.com. I'm going to be checking out one of their, they have every Sunday night, you can go and find out information and attend a virtual meeting where you can learn more about this. But it's really, I think it's fascinating, and I'm excited to learn more about it and to personally contribute or participate in this mass U.S. general strike as a way to stand up and let folks know that this kind of injustice is not going to stand. So I'll put the website link in there. Did it show by any chance? Did it show on the screen? I was trying to share it. It didn't. Oh, now maybe it is. Yeah, there it is. Sorry about that. There it is. And I'll put the link in the description or in the comments. There's a lot that's happening. I know that for me, for many people, at times it can be discouraging, but I think it's also really, really important that at the end of the day, I have to recognize that, I'm a white citizen male in America. So they're not coming for me yet, but they're coming for other populations just like they have before. And so I'm going to do a special challenge to those individuals who need to recognize and wrestle with their safety, their relative safety, because of their entitlement, because of the position that they have had, because they've inherited that position of preference, that we have to especially not given to any kind of apathy in this moment, but truly recognize the bravery of undocumented members of our community, of other immigrant populations, of our LGBTQ community, and I could go on. And we have to rise to the occasion and stand with them in allyship, utilizing a lot of the techniques and the strategies that my good friend Alex has shared. So anyways, Alex, I don't know if you have any other final thoughts to share. Other than that, I was just going to bring it to a close. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that one of the things right now that brings safety or security, I would say a feeling of safety and security, maybe not, within the context of what's happening in our nation, but brings that feeling is when we are in solidarity, when people come out for the vulnerable, for right now, those that are being targeted. Right now, even a lot, and we're speaking to people that are progressive thinkers, people that basically aren't aligned with what we're talking about. But even though you're in shock right now, probably, whoever's listening and watching, you're also seeing daily the the administration doing some crazy stuff that, is inching us more and more into a fascist government. I mean, you see all of the things that are going on right now, and we're like in shock of what's happening. And sometimes we're trying to deal with our own feelings, we're trying to deal with our own emotions. And many times, because we're so individualized and we're only thinking about how we're feeling right now, there are people right now and that's our privilege. There are people right now that they don't have that. They don't have time to process feelings. They don't have time to, try to figure out what their shock that they're, going through, how they're going to handle and manage these feelings. They're running for their lives. They're hiding. They can't go back. They can't go back to work. Many of them are afraid to go back to work because of that. And so I just want to encourage us to, take a moment of not just think about ourselves, even though we do have to process our feelings. I'm not saying we don't want to suppress how we're feeling, but we need to process it. But in the same manner, and I was speaking to a church the other day about this, and I said, many here are really grieved at what's happening in the nation, and the executive orders that are coming down from the administration. I said, but you have the privilege to process your feelings, but there's communities, there's groups in communities that are very vulnerable, like our LGBTQ siblings, that are right now, especially our trans siblings, that are going through also just great fear. They're afraid for their own lives. Secondly, our undocumented immigrants are afraid for their own lives. I mean, they're scared out of their minds of what's happening here and what's going on. So when they see people come out on their behalf, I think it's a very encouraging. It makes them feel safer. And I believe it does make a difference. We do. What the people can make a difference, like you're talking about. If the people rise up, if the people stand up, if the people resist, we can make a difference. And we have to. This is a moment in our history. If we're not catching on with what's going on here, we've seen governments, and we'll go back to Germany and what started happening. These are the things that started aligning to, the direction of a fascist government. This is what's happening now in our nation when you're seeing oligarchs in the White House, in the Oval Office. making decisions for people, billionaires making decisions for people, cutting aid to nations and people here across in the country. So we need to rise up in this moment, and we need to really see the urgency of this moment, and be able to respond in a correct manner into finding productive ways to resisting what's happening right now, and the sooner the better, because if we continue to allow this to happen, this is just going to get worse and worse, and we really have to do something about it. So that's my take on this, and I just wanted to throw that in there.
I'm not going to add anything else to that, because that's perfect. Because I just want to thank you, because over the years you've become a dear friend of mine, and I've learned so much from you, and I'm very proud to be your friend, and to also be a partner with you in any way I can, to stand with our undocumented community and with other communities that we know are being attacked, and just greatly appreciate you. So. Listen, be on the lookout. It'll take me a little while, maybe an hour or so, to add some of these links and things. So if you're just watching this fresh after we went live, you might not find some of those resources in there right away. I'm going to go eat some dinner. But love you, man. You're amazing. And thank you so much for being here. And with that, we will see you actually. This is the third Mondays of every month is when we do the Case of the Mondays. So next Monday, third Monday of next month, we'll be focusing on another population, and I'll be sharing more about that's being targeted. But then also the first Sundays of every month, we have a Sunday Go to Meeting, where that's a little bit more of a focus or talk about religion and philosophy. As well as just relationships, healthy relationships, mental health, all of those kind of things, especially through the lens of somebody who's a deconstructing evangelical like myself. But also, don't forget, because that's just once a month. It's just a time for me just to share some thoughts and maybe have a guest come on. But way more resources on that with the Deconstructors Club. So make sure you check that out as well. And with that said, Alex, listen, have a great rest of your evening, and everybody stay safe, stay strong, love relentlessly, and the world will come along as we show that determination. So, all right, listen, have a good one.
All right. Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, everyone.